Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror. Today we will explore the history of Gastria and unravel the bloody and violent past of this island and its infamous rulers. Before we begin, a few clarifications. If you have seen our previous video about Gastria, you already know that to flesh out this domain, we are expanding beyond official sources of the Ravenloft campaign setting and drawing inspiration from alternate sources and fan material created by the Fraternity of Shadows website. The domain of Gastria first appeared in an RPGA adventure called Dance of the Dead and was later featured in the book Dark Lords. After that first appearance, it only received mentions in the book Domains of Dread and the 3rd edition Ravenloft campaign setting. The domain would be covered in one of the 3rd edition gazetteers, focused on the Sea of Sorrows, but unfortunately, White Wolf's license to release books for the setting came to an end, and these books were not written. The Ravenloft fan community wouldn't let the setting rot in oblivion. The Fraternity of Shadows website, the most well-known and organized site for fans of the setting, has published netbooks that continue the gazetteer proposal, exploring in-depth the domains of dread. Some of these books explore the Nocturnal Sea, the domain of Sorang, or the cluster of Zerisha, for example, and for some time now they are developing a gazetteer for the Sea of Sorrows. Although the Sea of Sorrows gazetteer is not yet finalized as a book, some of its passages describing domains have already been previewed by their authors in the Court of the Raven netbooks. In the video description, I will also leave the link where you can download the netbook. The next videos about Gastria will be based on the official material and article about Gastria written by David Jester Gibson. The article on Gastria was published as a preview of the Gazetteer of the Sea of Sorrows, and it's possible that the final text will change when the Gazetteer of the Sea of Sorrows is finally published. Are you ready? In our search for Dr. Rudolf von Richten and for the cure of lycanthropy, we embark on a ship journey through the Sea of Sorrows toward the island of Dominia. We board the Black Pelican, a commercial and passenger ship that will make a long route through several islands until we reach our final destination. Our first stop is the island of Gastria, where several passengers disembark for a grand ball organized by its ruler, the illustrious Marquis Stefan de Polarno. While the ship's captain is conducting business on the island, we take some time to explore the region, and we attract the attention of an aristocrat, Baron Kama Demaroso. This gentle nobleman is quite curious and welcoming to our new arrivals on the island, and invites us to his residence for dinner, so that he can hear the news from the mainland and share his hospitality. Happy to be so well received in such a strange land, we head to his home, where we take advantage of our host's knowledge to learn more about the history of Gastria. Hour of the Raven. Those who research the history of Gastria are faced with an interesting and curious puzzle. The island has a population that is highly cultured and interested in the arts, and there is no lack of written sources for the history of Gastria. However, it is necessary for a historian to discern the truth behind the artistic liberties and style adopted by its authors. It is not uncommon for the history to be recorded in a poetic and lyrical way, or for many of their authors to opt for dramatic and thematic emphasis in their work, which do not value objectivity or fidelity to the facts. Among the facts that can be extracted from the history of Gastria, the oldest records date from around 400 years ago, and began when a nobleman, who lost prestige and was exiled from his homeland, decided to settle in the region. References to the original homeland of this nobleman are vague, and many have speculated about its location. The people of Gastria believe that they have a common origin with the land of Demon, and the use of modern-ish language on the island may indicate that there is some relationship between these people and the nations of Mordant and Demon, and that perhaps they came from the same original world before being swallowed by the mists. Little is known about the region of Gastria in this period, and records are also vague, making no mention to the region being an island. Its population is not described as fishermen, but as farmers, which adds to the confusion about the region's past. The past and name of this exiled nobleman is also lost to inaccurate records, and the nature of his crimes and scandals that caused him to seek exile is unknown. He arrived in this remote land, inhabited by peasants and farmers, bringing some of its vast resources, and became influential and powerful in the region, and after a time declared himself king of those lands. His act of political usurpation started a dynasty, and his family ruled this region unchallenged for nearly 200 years. The last ruler of this dynasty was King Odoric, and his rule was marked by serious crises, popular revolts, and a terrible tragedy that finally resulted in the isolation of Gastria by the mists. The political turbulence of his government was marked by the revolt of the popular masses, which, influenced by dissident political leaders, rose against the aristocracy. Interestingly, one of the most influential politicos of this era was the first Marquis Stefan II, a charismatic nobleman, famous and popular among the aristocracy and the commoners, known for defending popular causes and for his kindness and justice. Political friction reached an extreme during a bitter winter, when the Marquis incited the masses against King Odoric, insinuating that he was storing grain in his palace, while the people starved. The crisis was averted, and the king released his food reserve to the people to quell the revolt. The dissident aristocrat and agitator, the Marquis Stefan II, was arrested. For some time, he remained imprisoned in the royal dungeons, but the Marquis was too popular and influential to be executed. After some time in prison, the Marquis was finally released, but he was a shadow of his former self, a man traumatized by the events of his imprisonment. Now, cold, distant and reclusive, he was no longer the charming bon vivant who charmed the audiences. Life seemed to follow its normal course in Gastria, until a tragic event of the spring festival, the Paskis, when the entire aristocracy died of poisoning. The sole survivor of the Paskis massacre, the first Marquis Stefan II, became the highest aristocrat in the region. The event also marked the date when the region of Gastria was engulfed by the mists, somewhere between 560 and 580 of the Barovian calendar. The sudden chaos and horror of isolation from the known world gripped the region of Gastria, and the Marquis Stefan II took over the government and control of the region, using his prerogatives as an aristocrat to rule. Despite becoming the absolute ruler of the region, he refused to assume the title of king. Gastria was strangled economically. Once a prosperous region, now its isolation left it in serious economic crisis. Only after centuries of isolation, a misty pathway through the woods that led to the elven lands of Sidicus would be found, the only source of trade, and the population was suffering the consequences of the lost connection with the known world. These were also bloody and violent times in Gastria. Despite the Marquis consolidating himself as its absolute ruler, he did nothing about the horror of civil conflict that took over the region, when many small nobles began to openly fight for the power vacant left by the massacre of the Pasquis festival, trying to ascend socially and take over the large properties without any legal owner. The Marquis also proved to be a cruel tyrant. Stefan showed contempt and indifference to the horrors faced by the population, and maintained a luxurious and hedonistic lifestyle, supported by increasing taxes. A few scandalous reports from that period can be found, and talk about the excesses, immoralities, and abuses committed in his palace. For unknown and only speculated reasons, he started a war against religion, setting fire to the cathedral that existed in the city of East Riding, and banishing religious practices from his lands. Those who were his friends were above the law, and his personal guard committed all manner of atrocities without punishment. His word was law, and he judged any demand based on his whims and moods at the time. Those who dared to challenge his authority were arrested, tortured, and murdered. The Marquis took an avid interest in strangers who came to his lands, and it was not uncommon for many who attend his extravagant parties to be never seen again. Worse, the Marquis ruled for more than a century without aging, and sinister rumors circulated among the populace of his involvement in the dark arts of necromancy. The luck of the first Marquis would change after the year of 736 of the Barovian calendar, when the mist brought a group of adventurers to the region. These adventurers somehow survived one of the Marquis' infamous parties, and returned to the city of East Riding, accusing the Marquis of trying to steal their souls by some supernatural means. These adventurers were not satisfying with spreading these rumors, and invaded the Marquis' palace. They were unable to murder the Marquis, but they set fire to his mansion and stole a valuable object from there, which some attest to be a priceless work of art. The public defeat of the Marquis and the growing rumors of his involvement with the supernatural and dark arts made the population revolt against his abuses. Little by little, a rebellion formed, and the Marquis' personal guard began to fear the fury of the enraged mob. In the year 737, a new group of adventurers arrived in Gastria, but although they initially appeared to be allies of the Marquis, they turned against him and defeated him in combat. Believing that they had murdered him, the adventurers abandoned his body in his mansion. The rebellious population invaded the place after them as an angry mob, and found his agonizing body trying to rise again from death. Fearing he was a vampire, they drove a stake through his chest and decapitated his head. After the death of the first Marquis Stefan de Polarno, a power vacuum arose in Gastria. Without a central authority, other nobles tried to fight for power, without success. An old blood feud resurged. Fees and taxes were no longer collected, and every type of public service ceased to be provided. The Marquis' personal guard became a criminal militia, extorting money for protection, and the population defended their relatives and possessions against the chaos and criminality that was established during the anarchy. In 740, the land of Gastria was shaken by several tremors during the Grand Conjunction, and even the trail through the mists that linked these lands to the elven domain of Citicus was lost, isolating these lands even further in their own chaos. For 4 years, Gastria survived a period of chaos and destruction, until in 741, a man arrived in the region from distant lands, claiming to be the bastard son of the deceased Marquis Stefan. He claimed to be the fruit of an extramarital affair that the Marquis had at one of his infamous parties, and that he had been raised by his mother in a foreign country. Named after his father, Stefan the Polarno II had a physiognomy very similar to that of his father, but while the appearance of the deceased Marquis, although handsome, was marred by the abuses and excesses of his hedonistic lifestyle, his son was lean and slender, and physically looked a little older than his unaging father. Stefan II proved to be a skillful and influential negotiator. He assumed his father's inheritance and possessions, but initially refused the title of Marquis. He garnered support from the militia and aristocracy, and placated the rebellious people with donations from part of his father's fortune, restoring some semblance of order to the lands of Gastria. As if the dark powers recognized a new era in Gastria, the mist parted around the domain, revealing the coast and sea around them. Now an island, Gastria found salvation from its economic difficulties. Its inhabitants found in the oceans a lucrative fishing activity, which not only alleviated a little the lack of flavor that contaminates the region's food, but also opened new commercial possibilities. Stefan used part of his family resources to build a port in Gastria, and soon ships from other parts of the core arrived on the island, breaking its isolation and bringing trade and wealth. Stefan was determined to restore his family's surname and make up for the atrocities and horrors that surrounded his father's rule. His generous gestures, his large donations, and the sudden prosperity of Gastria made the population quickly forget the past, and in 744, Stefan the Polarno II was hailed as the new Marquis by the local aristocracy, which was well received by the population. Marquis Stefan the Polarno II was known as a reasonable man and re-established ancient laws and minimal guarantees to the population. Despite having won the support of the population and his peers, the Marquis was a more discreet man and lived largely in reclusion in his mansion. Rumors and gossip claimed that he shared his father's vices and held scandalous parties on the property, but rarely could anyone confirm what transpired at these private events. The opening of the island also brought contact with different foreign cultures, and the people of Gastria identified Modern and Demonlu as sister nations. However, it is in Demonlu that Gastria is mostly inspired, partly absorbing its cultural influence and believing that they share a common past and origin. With increasing commerce and cultural influences, it was not long before religious influence reaches the island, and anchorites of Ezra arrived to convert the population. Much has been speculated as to whether Marquis Stefan II would have a violent reaction to religious practices on the island, but unlike his father, he was indifferent to the presence of clerics in his lands. More than that, in the year 755, the island received an expedition of missionaries anchorites, who negotiated with the Marquis to build a great cathedral of the faith of Ezra on the island. The construction was partially funded by the Marquis and is still ongoing, promising to be a splendid architectural work, full of paintings and sculptures by renowned artists. In exchange for the cession of lands and funds, the church agreed to take the son of Marquis Stefan, a teenage boy who lived in seclusion in his mansion, to be educated in one of its monasteries. After 18 years of rule, Marquis Stefan the Polarno II died suddenly and unexpectedly in a hunting accident, attacked by a wild boar in the year 759. Shortly afterwards, his mysterious son arrived on the island, Marquis Stefan the Polarno III, to assume his father's title and state. Rumor has it that the monastery where he was being educated on the mainland suffered a terrible fire shortly after his departure, killing everyone present at the time. The youngest Marquis seemed to have inherited his grandfather's bon vivant spirit, and many are eagerly waiting to see how he pretends to rule the island. After a lively evening, our host, Baron Demaroso, asked us many questions about our adventures across the continent, and we, in turn, quizzed our host about the history of the island of Gastria. He seems willing to reveal a lot about the island, and seemed to tease us with possible secrets. More than once, he mentioned that the Marquis' library keeps more accurate records of the past, and even that in a secret compartment in one of his desks are hidden details of the first Marquis Stefan, known for his scandalous and infamous reports of his hedonistic and sinful behaviors. The Baron does not spare resources to bring many dishes with distinguished flavors for dinner, with fishes from the open ocean and spices from the mainland. However, when he brings the main course, a roasted leg of a lamb, our senses of smell sharpened by our lycanthropy detects a familiar smell, which at the same time disgusts us and make the wolf inside us salivate. The meat smells like human flesh, and we suddenly invent reasons to get away from there. The Baron looks both worried and curious about our sudden reaction, as we mumble apologies and hurry to say goodbye. He seemed to appraise us thoughtfully as we walked toward the exits, and then, suddenly and authoritatively, asked us to wait. He said he would forgive this indiscretion, if only we would attend the Marquis' ball as his guests. That would happen in the next night. He knows that our ship will be here for at least 2 more nights, and says that he and the Marquis will be deeply offended if we decline his invitation. Disconcerted, we accept the invitation given to us, and return to the ship for a night of dormant nightmares. When dawn breaks, in the light of day and the sound of the waves, we question our nervous reaction to the night before. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, some scent of an unknown spice in the local cuisine, or the effect of alcohol on our traumatized minds. Curiosity also seems to consume us, not only to get to know the famous Marquis Stefan and his luxurious mansion and event, but also to access his library, where Baron Demaroso suggested that so many infamous secrets can be found. At dusk, our curiosity overcomes us. We prepare for the festivities and head towards the Marquis' palace. In its illuminated hall, we are received at the luxurious event, and we share Marquis Stefan's hospitality and personal magnetism. While many guests are having fun, we take advantage of a moment of distraction to enter his library. Moved by the desire for knowledge and our shameless indiscretion, we check the library desk to search for the secret compartment mentioned by Baron Demaroso. To our surprise, we found there several documents and pages with the Marquis' infamous scandalous writings. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and together we will reveal the scandalous and infamous secrets of Gastria.